All right, we're joined by David Williamson. David, thank you so much for stopping by. Everybody's raving about you and your story and the pearls of wisdom we can learn. But before we hear about your two near-death experiences, let's take us back before that. What was David like?
Yeah, the first one happened at age 6. So my childhood I was extremely happy, really into nature. I like to dig holes and try to find treasures. Oh, I did air quotes.
Better you than me.
Yeah, and try to find treasures, which was usually just rocks and broken pieces of glass that I like to color. Anything that I found was a treasure to me. And I would fall asleep in trees and bushes, and I just played with animals like bugs and crawdads. We'd make them fight. I was just a nature boy, and I had a few friends. One of them, David Williamson, was one of my friends. He's passed, but we stayed in the woods, playing with everything, trying to figure out everything, and it was just a magical childhood for me. And at 6 is when I drowned, and things kind of switched because I had AMD.
So were you swimming in a pond or in a pool or what happened?
Camp. It was a summer camp, and I was on a dock watching the kids swim. And I wasn't really paying attention to the fact that they all had on life jackets, but I did say to myself, okay, they probably can't swim the same way I can't swim, but they got confidence because they have on these life jackets, you know. And so I'm going to grab me one of those. I'm just going to jump in. And when I jumped in, the life jacket stayed at the top of the water, and I kept going down.
Wow.
And as I'm going down, which seemed like was forever, I started having a thought to myself, like, I'm not going to be able to hold my breath for much longer. And then I blacked out. And when I blacked out, there was a voice that just said, if you can touch the bottom, you can push yourself back up. And my response to that voice was, it doesn't look like I'm going to touch the bottom. I'm just going down. And as soon as I said that, I started floating back up. And at some point when I'm floating back up, I look up and I could see the light coming in from the top of the water. And that was exciting to see it because I was seeing complete blackness for a moment, moments before that. And then I saw a splash in the water and saw from the splash, there was these circles radiating.
The ripples.
The ripples. Yeah. And it captivated me because the light and the ripples and the circles getting bigger and bigger and bigger meant a lot to me that I didn't understand at that time. What was happening to me, because in my childhood, I seen the KKK marching up and down the street multiple times. I was already learning how to hate. I was already being hated and hating back and assuming that was just normal, you know. But that circle, I'll mention again later. So what was happening with me is my circle was small. I could only love people that loved me back and that looked like me and that thought like me, and because anything outside of my circle I deemed as violent and hateful and dangerous for me, because my experience kind of
validated
that, yeah. And but when you only can learn love in a small circle, that's an analogy for love, but that's not really love.
Right.
That's how you learn love, is through smaller circles. But the circle has to radiate out, like the ripples in my first NDE. So I spent my life in that small circle. I spent my life feeling responsible for people, you know, but only responsible for people who
were like you.
Were like me. I don't know. You have to ignore a lot of hypocrisy and, you know, just bad thinking to justify isolating yourself from the entire planet. You know what I'm saying? And assuming that everybody outside of your group is evil. Like, there's a lot of things you have to make up and lie to yourself about for that to actually make sense. And
this is a 6-year-old process and all this?
Well, it's from 6 all the way up through to 40. I'm just angry that now my perspective is getting more and more sophisticated. Like, I'm reading about the history of this place and the history of that place, and I'm still saying that it was imperialism by white people that destroyed these countries, that messed up the planet, that messed up this country, that messed up that culture, that messed up, and I'm just pointing fingers at them because that's where my bias would have me point the finger. But, you know, after the NDE, there are no theys and others. What I feel about this country in particular is that we have bad systems and people exploiting, bad systems, but everybody in politics aren't evil.
Right.
Yeah. But the systems definitely need to be fixed, need to be refined, and we need to start focusing Americans' attention on issues that affect us all, not these issues that polarize us, that politicians seem to exploit to keep us divided.
Now, this philosophy that you were documenting that was going through your mind, this was cultivated by how you grew up and how you were surrounded and how you defined your life.
Yes.
But take me back to that first experience. So did you eventually push up, I'm guessing, and you got to the top? And, and were there any other residual effects from that?
A lot of them.
Yeah.
Great question. When I finally did grab the pole, because that's what caused the ripples, I came out. My brother, I sat on the edge of the dock, and I coughed a couple times, and then I had a big sigh. I just let out a big sigh. My brother, I turned around and I looked at the people that were behind me, and they were panicking and was crying and screaming. People thought I was dead. I didn't integrate this as a traumatic experience because it didn't affect me that badly. Like the voice that talked to me when I was under the water was so peaceful and calming that I did not integrate that experience as traumatic. So
beyond the initial voice that you had said, if you can hit the bottom, you push up, what other dialogue did you experience?
I responded, it doesn't seem like I'm going to touch the bottom, I'm just going down. And then I started floating back up. And that was it as far as dialogue. But once I started floating back up, seeing the light at the top and seeing the splash and the ripples, that to me, my 6-year-old mind, I don't think I would have been able to extract much else from that experience.
Gotcha.
So what's happening now, though, is that I'm seeing, with this 40, the NDA that happened at 40, I'm remembering more about that experience.
And what precipitated that?
A
heart attack?
Valve, yeah, heart valve ripped, and then 7 days later I had a heart attack. What happened after this 6-year-old NDE, though, is part of what led me to the depression and the anger, is that I started having visions that I was in Hiroshima and Nagasaki during the nuclear holocaust.
Really?
And it was very traumatic for me because I saw buildings collapse and I saw explosions, people running, screaming, and I was in that scene. And
you felt like you were living through that?
yes.
Wow.
And when I would have these visions, my mom said my body would be stiff, and I would just be, I don't want to die, 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 and then it would go away. But when I was in that state, I was in Hiroshima or Nagasaki. I never know which one it is, but I was watching the bombs.
Were they prompted by your 6-year-old NDE?
NDE,
Wow.
yeah. And I also started having visions of the future where how I described it with my 6-year-old mind was that was human roadkill. And the reason why I probably articulated that way is because when I was a child, when I saw a dead animal on the side of the road, it disturbed me, and I hated it. I hated seeing dead animals on the side of the road. So when I had this vision of the future and I saw humans on the side of the road, it broke me, and I did not want to participate anymore in any of this.
So real quickly, did you feel like you had lived through that? Do you think you just somehow got a glimpse of that viscerally and incorporated it into your paradigm of what life was about?
I got a glimpse of it.
Yeah.
But the Hiroshima thing felt like memory. It felt like I was there. This other thing felt like I was watching it happen, and it was bad to see it. And so the anger from racial trauma, the anxiety and fear and anger from Hiroshima, the Hiroshima memory, and the fear and anxiety associated, and anger still, because I was angry at the people who I blamed for pushing the button, and I did not trust that they wouldn't push the button again. And one of my thoughts about the death in the future was that somebody did push the button again, and that was what caused that human roadkill in the future. The future timeline that I was seeing. So I just went through my entire life with that stuff as the backdrop of what I was experiencing, and I didn't. You can't choose or have any type of agency when you are permanently triggered. You don't have access to executive functioning. All I was doing was responding to triggers, reacting
Right.
to triggers automatically.
Right. And so they say you always react to error and act on the truth. So you were in a constant state of reacting. Yeah. That had to be tough, man.
Very tough, and you're not interfacing with reality in that state. You're interfacing with the worst, the thing that you imagine in your mind that makes you the most angry. That's what you think reality is.
And you're bringing it to fruition by constantly dwelling on it.
Yep. And it becomes all you see. It's the filter through which, or the lens through which you're looking at reality. Then your reality is going to look that way, and then you're going to blame reality for hurting you when you are the creator of your experience. And the second NDE, that was what I learned. I am the creator of my experience. So who can I point the finger at? Me. My attention did this.
But you also have to forgive yourself for going to that other place, because we all do it. We defer towards that. We deferred towards fear or anger or prejudice or all of those things that are human emotions.
It's intellect. It's easy. It's easy to.
It's an easy default.
Yeah. You have when you have to have an accurate opinion or perspective of something, you got to go learn. And a lot of people aren't willing to go learn and interface with others, and
you have to be open.
You got to be open, and I wasn't. So I was not learning. I was just reinforcing bias and reinforcing trauma narratives, reinforcing things that I'd already accepted about this reality that I was angry about. So I wasn't going out looking for beauty. I was going out looking for confirmation of everything that I'd already
See,
accepted.
I told you. Look at that. No, what I'm saying is I'm just pointing at what you're looking at, not that literally,
exactly.
but what you're seeing. You're seeing literally is confirming your bias.
That's it.
Everything you see fits into that category. So in the second NDE, what was the insight that propelled you out of that anger?
I'll share how it kind of happened. I was leaving work. Well, 7 days prior, February 1st, I was just talking to my friends inside of my garage. We were just talking, and I feel a sting. I feel like a rip, but I don't feel anything here. It's all in my middle of my back, behind my heart, maybe.
So you think you pulled a muscle or
I think it's something, because I already have 7 herniated discs. I have 2 torn, 2 bulging, and I have back pain a lot. So when it started hurting back there, my immediate thing, oh my God, it's back. I said this to my buddy. I said, man, this back pain just shifted gears. And then my shoulder was hurting really bad. So I was walking around holding my shoulder literally like this because it felt like it was ripping off. And then 7 days later, I had a heart attack. But it was I was leaving work, and I felt that a sting. And after 7 days, that was the first time I felt anything in my heart. And it stung there. And when it stung, I immediately was like, my breath was like taken away almost instantly. And I was having to like kind of regain my composure because it was affecting my breathing almost instantly. And so I sat in the car and I was like, should I call 911 now? Or should I just try to get home?
So tell me, so you don't go to the hospital, which would have been the smart thing to do. You drive home, and then what happens?
I get home, and I'm still like, am I all right? Can I shake this off and keep it moving? Let me make a snack. I made a sandwich, man, thinking that maybe because I had lost my gallbladder a couple years prior due to the same issues.
And it'll mimic heart issues.
Yeah. So I was like, maybe I just need a sandwich. So I made a sandwich, and nothing changed. I'm still feeling horrible. So I called my son's mother, his name Trisha. She works from home. So I called up and I said, I need to go to the emergency room because this is not getting better and I feel like it's getting worse. So she takes me, and on the way, I'm losing my breath big time. I'm having to literally take deep inhales just to stay I can not passing out.
Like you're awake,
Exactly. And so I get to the emergency room, and they're asking me to sign papers and all this stuff. I'm like,
check me out, man.
I was like, I'm having a heart attack, and I know I'm having a heart attack. I cannot do any of that. I'm not even functioning properly. And I'm leaning on Trish, because my balance is off. I'm about to pass out. and I cussed this guy out about this paperwork, like really bad, you know. And after the NDE, I came back and apologized. I felt horrible.
Sure.
But as I'm cussing him out, the door opens and the gurney comes out. So he had already called
Activated it.
Yeah, and I was thinking that all he was
See,
doing.
so in your life review, you know,
yeah,
you
gotta be.
You already took care of him though. Said, sorry, bro, I didn't mean it.
I didn't mean it. Yeah, so I get on the gurney, man, and I would say less than 10, 15, 20 seconds, I was out. And so they're pushing me on the gurney, and they turn a corner, and I see the double doors that I'm gonna go through where they're gonna be working on me. But I laid on my left side like I normally do when I go to sleep. And the last thought that I had is, this is gonna be some amazing sleep. And I died.
You coded right there?
Yeah, and when I get through the door, my heart's probably still beating because my awareness is still in my body, but my eyes aren't working. I'm seeing where people are, I'm seeing dots of light. And hearing sounds like I'm underwater. It's almost like a machine is shutting down and all of the functions are not working.
It's losing
properly.
power.
It's losing power, yeah. So, not hearing well. Everything I'm seeing is just blackness with dots of light. And then I'm in the place. I go through those doors, in less than 5 seconds probably after I get in the doors, I'm out of my body, and I'm looking down at what's happening, and they're prepping to start resuscitation, and the defibrillator pads come out, boom. I'm not concerned at all about any of that. I have no feeling of any of that, because one of the things they asked me when I came back, somebody asked me, did you feel that? And I didn't feel anything.
No.
But so I'm watching that, but there's a woman in the back of the room on the left side that's holding her face like this the whole time. Like she's really sad that I'm dying. And I'm above my body looking down, and I'm looking at her, and I'm like, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. Like, this is
right. I
beautiful.
feel great.
I feel great. I'm not confused. I'm not hurting. I'm not angry at anything. And why are you sad? And I'm trying to communicate with her, but she can't hear me. She can't see me. And that annoyed me.
Right.
And the guy with the defibrillator pads, he's blaming himself. And I feel that, and I hear, I feel it. I just feel his pain, like his anxiety about me, dying. And
so you're clairaudient, so you're hearing everybody else's thoughts in the room, and you're able to identify with that. You have no attachment to the body; it's fine.
I'm not looking.
You feel
at my
great.
Body. Yeah, I don't care. I don't think I looked at my body at all throughout the entire process. I was looking at those two people that I wanted to be okay. I wanted them to be okay with me leaving. But I honestly think that if those two people weren't there responding to my death, I would have just kept traveling through space. I don't think I would have kept coming back into the emergency room trying to console those people.
Right.
But I kept coming back into the emergency room trying to console them. And the last time that I did, that's when I got resuscitated. But as I'm watching myself being resuscitated before I come back that last time, I'm really just concerned about them. And then at one point I casually look up, kind of like I did when I drowned at age 6.
Yeah.
But this time I'm gone to space, and it's like it's a void. And everything is there.
Okay, so you get into the hospital.
Yes.
You're kind of arguing with people because you're saying, listen, I'm dying, let's take care of this. I don't want to sign paperwork. And then take us to what happens after that.
Yeah. The gurney, the door opens and the gurney, and then I immediately feel bad because I realized at that moment that he had already called, for help.
Right.
And I'm thinking that he's just trying to force me to sign paperwork before he's willing to call for help.
That's pretty good. You didn't even have your life review yet.
Yeah. But so I get on the gurney, and like I said, like maybe 10 seconds, 15 seconds, I'm pretty much out. I'm out. And I remember right before I pass out, it just feels like sleep is coming, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. Like it's just, I'm shutting down. But I roll over on my left side, because that's the way I normally sleep. And the last thought that I have is, this is going to be some beautiful sleep, and I'm gone. And then there's a few transitions where I'm, like I said, the hearing is crazy. It sounds like I'm underwater. I see blackness, but where people were standing or are standing, I can see these specks of light, like pixels, almost like a nighttime sky, like stars even in the blackness.
But like a TV powering down?
Exactly, kind of like that, yeah. And I'm watching that, kind of like, like I said, just kind of seemed like I'm just shutting down. And then I go into the room where they are, where they're working on, where they're going to be defibrillating and working, resuscitating me, and I'm out of my body at that point, and I'm looking down at everything from above, and I see the defibrillator pads, I see the guy defibrillating, but there's this woman in the back of the room on the left side that's really, really holding my attention because she's holding her face like this, and she's
worried about you.
Yes, in real distress, and I want to explain to her, and I'm trying to talk to her, yeah, this is beautiful. You should not feel bad about what's happening to me. This is beautiful. And so I'm watching her the whole time, and it's like I can't, she can't hear me. And the other guy that's holding the defibrillator pads, he can't hear me, and I'm upset that he's feeling like he's to blame, you know. But so when I go in the room and I'm out of my body, I'm watching all of this, and one of the first things that I hear though is he's dead. You used to be there. It wasn't like, oh my God, I'm dead. It was he's dead. You used to be there, and I pretty casually accepted that. Didn't really look at him. Just accepted that.
And where did this voice come from?
Inside of me. It seemed like it was inside of me. And
it was like a knowing?
Yeah. It was like I was talking to myself, but there were moments where he used he and you and your, and you know.
Did you have any attachment to the body at all?
None at all.
You were cool?
Yeah. I was concerned about the people that were sad about me dying. And that was where all of my attention on this planet was. It was just on those two people. There was nothing else here that I was caring about, you know. So I wanted those two people to feel better about me leaving. So even after I left, because at one point I casually look up and then I'm in the void, in space, but even after I left, I kept coming back because I would look down.
Check on them.
Yeah, I kept coming back, and I couldn't stand it. Like that was if there's any negative part of my NDE, it was that I couldn't tell them
that you were cool, that
I was cool, and that you should feel good, and that you know, and I couldn't console them, you know. So that was, if there's any negative part, it's just that. But everything was perfect. It was a perfect experience. I was in a perfect place, in a perfect state. And
where do you go next?
Yeah, I watch this. I go to this void. I'm in the void. Like I said, it's just a dense blackness that you feel like you're almost moving through, like it's physical blackness.
Like it has texture.
Like it has texture, like velvet. I've heard a lot of people say the same thing, and it's the absolute best way to describe it. And in my periphery, everything's alive. Like I see faces, people, movement, like, but none of it I can look at. As soon as I turn and focus on something, it disappears like smoke. And I could see how, I've heard people describe the void in kind of anxiety. I could see how they might interpret that as like a ghostly images, so you know what I'm saying, or
like
something.
A negative as opposed to.
But how I knew that it was just because everything is there and nothing is there at the same time. So you're not going to have a definite image of anything, but you're going to have the potential for anything to be. But it ain't going to be not there. You know what I'm saying? So I understood that. So there was, even seeing that stuff fading away in like smoke.
So it didn't bother you?
None of it did, and I still could feel love. So there was nothing for me to feel anxiety about. I was comfortable.
I've heard a lot of people describe the black void as, you know, almost being encompassed in a warm blanket and
a womb.
A loving embrace.
Yeah. I when I came back, I saw an image of the goddess Nut, and she's the carrier of the stars, and you see the stars. She's a black body with the stars inside of her. I was in Nut, is when I saw that image, that's what I thought. I was in Nut. I was in the womb of creation, and it just felt perfect. But so I watch everything in space. Like I finally do come out of the void, because that was the bulk of my experience, was either in the void or adjacent to the void, because that felt like home and it felt comfortable. So when I came out of the void, I stared into it for a while. Any question I had, any confusion I had, I would see just some slight movement in the void, like color change, a twirl, but no words, no images. But the answer was inside of me before the thought was fully formed, before the question was fully formed.
So it was instantaneous.
Instantaneous. So there are people who've asked me questions like, well, didn't you miss anybody? And I was like, before you could even think about missing somebody, you feel the satisfaction of already being with them, because we are all a part of this same reality, and when you're out of your body, you're one with it. So concepts and ideas like missing someone or longing for something, they don't exist.
Because nobody goes anywhere, right? We're always inextricably linked to one another on a soul level and an energetic level.
Yeah, and I experienced like every question or any tension or the clarity was instantaneous before the tension actually took form, before the question even was fully formed, you know? So there's no confusion there. There's no missing, there's no absence, there's none of that, you know? But you know, because then some people say, well, then what's the point of coming here? Like, why, if I'm already in a perfect state, why do I come here? I think it is to just experience.
Yeah,
it is to.
You could hear about what it's like to live in a terrestrial environment and experience strife and not strife and love and visceral and children and all of the accoutrements that come with life. Yeah. But like you said, until you experience it, it's a concept.
That's
right?
it. That's it. And then when you think about, like, I've been trying to figure out my experience and trying to understand and land and better explain it. But when you think about, like, he was mentioned recently by a celebrity, Terrence Howard Richard mentioned Walter Russell. But when you think about Walter Russell and some of the things that he taught, like he described almost like the soul cycle, and by just talking about how light comes out of the void and it starts off as an idea and it spins, then the spin creates heat, the heat creates light, now light is in the void. So now it separates from the void because the void isn't light. So now it's something, you know, that something it moves through space and becomes a star that's the center of a solar system. It can become a soul that goes into a person. Like, I don't know, you know what I'm saying? But it's creation, and it starts from an idea that turns in on itself and creates heat and glows, and it becomes either us or something else. But though the ideas that seem to animate this experience start off as in the void and become separated from the void and then become a part of the creation. And I was attention. When I was the orb of light in space, the only thing I was attention. I didn't have a historical reference point. I didn't have memory to be like, oh, when I was in the 12th grade, that star forming region that I saw in space, it reminds me of this. No, there was no reference point. Everything that I saw, I was immediately amazed and wowed by it, and I just said, and I moved immediately to it. And so when I first came out of the void, one of the first things I saw was a star forming region, and it had like the cotton candy colored clouds, the red, pink, and white, the blue, the dark blue, like, oh, it was beautiful. And I could see the faint stars forming in those clouds. And I said, and I moved straight to the clouds, but I never did go into the faint stars, the forming stars, because it almost felt like a nursery. Like I was just, because I remember thinking, so this is where stars are born. And then I just stopped on the outskirts of that and just looked, just observed it. But pretty much everything else, I just, but that space I was slowly moving through. I was careful. Yeah, it felt sacred, you know. But it all was beautiful, and being able to see things like because when I came out of the void, when I looked down into it, I realized that that space was black, but that space was blacker than space. So the only thing after I came back, the only thing that I could think of that is blacker than space is a black hole, you know, And so I looked at the voids, all of them, because I could look out in space and see that there were others. They looked like black holes to me, because they were just spaces in space that were blacker than space and seemed to be black holes.
And how long were you there before you returned to your body?
In real time, it's probably like 5 minutes or less. And that time it felt like
millennia. It
felt like a long time. Yeah. At least a half a day of traveling through space is what it seemed like I got to. Yeah, and at least hours, you know.
Yeah.
So, but time is definitely different. But
so when you come back into your body, what happens?
I blurted out, "Are you okay?" Because prior to me actually coming back into my body, I was still trying to explain to the woman that what I was seeing was beautiful. It's amazing. You shouldn't be upset that I'm dying.
And she's not hearing a word.
And she's not hearing a word I'm saying. And then that very last time that I'm trying it again, I got resuscitated. And as I'm talking to her, and my eyes open, I just blurt, "Are you okay?" And I look at the guy with the defibrillator pads, and I say, "Are you okay?" And he cuts me off. I said, "No, are you okay?" And then the guy to the right of me, somebody to the right says, "You didn't feel that?" And I said, "Feel what?" Well, I was about to say, "Feel what?" But I had looked down and saw this gel pad on my chest. And I could see the indentions in the gel pad that were the same size as the defibrillator pads that the guy was holding. And that's when my human mind caught up and was like,
wow,
you really did just die. Like you were dead. And this part I sometimes don't share because it's just weird to me. But I laid back and that was immediately I felt this person's face, like I felt his presence in right close to my face. And I'm like, what the hell is this? So I do like this. And I see this guy standing, like literally just looking in my face with his eyes wide open. And he said, "What did you see?" And I'm tired. I'm still trying to process what I saw.
Right.
I really didn't have a whole lot to say, but I wanted to tell him something, I think, and I was kind of being a jerk. So I raised my eyebrows up just like he did, and I said, "Blackness." And it made me laugh to myself even then. You know what I'm saying? Because I was like, why did I do that? But it was so funny to me because I didn't know if he was a human being or if he was just a spirit that just popped into the room when I came back. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But he was hilarious. His energy was loving. It was excited, you know, to ask me that question.
So was he one of the attendants, or was
I don't know about him.
Or was
because
he
after
a spirit? Or
that's what I really don't know, because after I said blackness, I kind of just fell back and went to sleep. You know what I'm saying? And was pushed out. But he didn't feel like a person. Like he did not feel like a person at all. But I mean, I was still kind of in between both worlds too. You know what I'm saying? So, but I thought that was hilarious. You know, because he literally looked like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. Like, I mean, and his eyes was all wild, and what did you see? And I just had to give him the blackness. So it was just funny to me. And from there, that was pretty much the end of that experience. But when I came back to my life, over time, I realized that I wasn't triggered by the things that I had been triggered by before. And if I did have a response that was negative, it was just a habit. And I was able to know that because I didn't feel any nervous system response. I didn't feel any blood pressure change. I didn't feel anything negative. So if I said something that was kind of automatic and negative, I knew that was just an habitual response. It had nothing to do with how I felt. So after I worked through all of these realizations that I didn't feel any way about any of these things, I stopped reacting that way. And I just said, okay, if I don't have a body response to this, then I don't have to give it an emotional response.
Right.
And then over time, I just started detaching these reactions to those ideas, and eventually I was clear that I don't have any attachment to human ideology and identity and none of the stuff I did before. And
so all of your anger and angst was gone?
It was pretty much gone. Yeah. And I mean, there's still healing and there's still regressions that you experience. And I do experience frustration. The two things that I experience now is frustration and impatience. But my nervous system is never going to be like, I'm ready to hurt somebody over anything.
Like you want to snap.
No, it's just, some of it is hopelessness. Like when people are engaging me, asking spiritual questions that imply that they have some kind of hope or understanding of spiritual reality, but they're only asking about negative things. Like, well, are we gonna die there? Is it death there? Or will I get to see my dog? If I don't see my dog, I don't want to go to heaven. You know? And I'm like, well, why? Like, why? If you know that you are one with every single thing in the cosmos, why would focusing specifically on what you possibly can't have be the focus of your inquiry when I'm telling you you're one with the cosmos? And missing it doesn't exist there. Confusion doesn't exist there. You know, absence doesn't exist there. But they still go through this exercise where they're just saying, well, what about pets? Or, well, I like the way my mother did this. Will I get to see my mother in her form? Because I like, well, your mother, if she's there, she's good.
Yeah.
And if somehow the experience happens, you won't be in charge of how it happens. But our attention, in my opinion, creates these experiences.
Yeah.
And if our attention is on whatever is on, that increases the likelihood of that thing showing up as we transition out of here.
Were you a religious guy before this happened?
Nah, I had already detached from a lot of it. So even my life review was like maybe 5-10 seconds.
So you see a lot of this, and I know now that you're in this space, a lot of the archetypes that present to us, like if you're raised in an evangelical home, or if you're Buddhist, or if you're Taoist, or depending if you're Aborigine, or however deity is represented to you, that's how they speak. That's how the other side speaks to you, because you're comfortable with that, right?
Yeah.
So they converse. It may not. Maybe it is Jesus, but maybe it's not.
Yeah.
But whatever makes you feel good, right? Is that bad? So it's like you're saying, well, I don't know if your mother's going to be wearing that dress, but if that makes you happy, then she probably will present that way if that makes you happy.
And I honestly feel like we can increase the likelihood of anything that we want to happen happening by focusing on it happening. Like thinking about, like we create our human experience with our attention, and we create our afterlife experience with our attention. So it's the same creative capacity whether you are in body or out of the body. Our attention, when I looked at something and I said, I went there and I understood what it was and I had an experience. Here, I focused on misery for 34 years and I was depressed for 34 years and miserable. So it's the same thing. Our attention is going to dictate what our experience is. So if you take our attention off of self-defeating, hopeless ideas, this life becomes sweeter. You know?
Have you been able to articulate this to your friends who supported your former life, who are like, no, man, they're bad. They're just bad. They just hate us all. You can't.
One of the worst people that was like probably just as angry as I am, if not more angry. He just shared some thoughts with me recently. It just makes me laugh because he hated everybody, and now he's echoing some of my, some of the things that I believe, and his experience is teaching him some of the same things. And he didn't have an NDE. He had a traumatic experience that could have actually contributed to his shift of perspective, but he's beautiful. Like he's working through the trauma of being able to publicly state that he doesn't think that way anymore. Because what you will get is there are people who will say, "Oh, you on that kumbaya stuff now?" Oh, yeah, exactly. And I'm like, no. But I have seen timelines where we actually do keep forward with this rhetoric, with the violent rhetoric, with the others and they rhetoric, and it's not a good timeline.
Yeah.
It's a lot of death, and it's your brothers and sisters are gonna die too. It ain't just them gonna die. Right. We all are gonna die a lot, and if we keep this orientation moving forward. So nobody wins with that. So you can stay mad and you can feel you're right, but the culminating, how that culminates is people you love are gonna die because you are pushing this war narrative that doesn't even need to happen. If you put my brain on a table in my spinal cord, put your brain and your spinal cord on the table, whose is whose? That is the machinery through which we interpret this reality. Awesome. That's it. So now I'm out of my body in space, I'm an orb of light. My assumption is I'm not special. I'm not different than anybody else. I didn't die because I cultivated some deep knowing that no one else had. I didn't nam yo ho reng yo kyo myself to enlightenment. I died because I was stupid. I died because I was stubborn. I died because I would not shift on my own. So how could I have this big light in me that knows everything and nobody else does it? I didn't cultivate that in my life with my spiritual practices. So it's just there. And it's just there in you. So if I know that, one, our physical machinery, your organs, your brain, your nervous system are pretty much the same. And I also know that you have this orb of light in you that knows everything. What is our differences? You were born here and I was born there. You were raised this way, I was raised that way. Those are insignificant things that we can reconcile very quickly just by saying, oh, where were you born? Oh, okay, what do you believe? Oh, okay. Exactly. But your nervous system and your soul is pretty much the same. Yeah. And when I think about it like that, I just don't see any days and others. And when you do imagine days and others, eventually there's gonna automatically be violence on the horizon because you're gonna eventually feel the need to protect yourself from those days and others, But there are no days and others. It's just us, and we need to figure it out. We need to do better here. We need to treat each other better, and it ain't got a whole lot to do with demons and gods coming to save the day. It's simple human behavior. Let's
Yes.
learn how to behave.
Yes.
You know, stop pointing fingers at people. If there's a problem, fix it. You don't have to feel any way about it. Fix it.
Right.
You know, and if you can't fix it, get some people together that can fix it. But to feel some kind of way about a issue, it doesn't make sense to me anymore. I don't have to feel it. First of all, this entire system has been in existence so long before I came here.
Right.
So why would I take any problem that exists here personally or as my unique personal responsibility? This system is vast and ancient. It didn't do anything to me.
Right.
I just came here, and this thing is what it is. I observed it, and I was hurt by it, and then I made up lies about it.
Well, and I think really, when you reduce it to a lowest common denominator, life is volitional. I can't make you feel any way other than you're going to feel.
That's it.
Now, I can articulate my position, and I can hope that you embrace it, and
Yeah.
we hope that we can come to some kind of consensus. But certainly by MFing you, I'm not going to get your attention, right?
Yep.
That's
Yep.
just going to get your ire.
That's
so
it.
I'm going to stir your ire, and then it's just going to create more problems. So
That's
I think
it.
we're getting to a point with the frequency and resonance. There's got to be an easier way than dying to get to it, right? But
Yeah.
if we can articulate this for the preponderance of people who have manifested on this plane of existence right now,
Yeah.
that it's going to be a lot better to live joyously and respect each other and love one another. You don't have to agree with everything that
Yeah.
everybody says, but you certainly don't have to be incendiary.
Exactly.
And you don't have to be violent.
Exactly.
You know, because violence begets violence.
Yeah, that to me is that's exactly what I was about to say. Like, we can look at history and see where a group of people was annihilated to bring in a different order. How long did that different order stay in place? Violence came and undid that. Violence will never be a medium through which change can occur. It don't. We have hindsight to confirm that. And what's even crazy about violence to me is that after dying and coming back, you realize that the gift is life. The gift is that the system sustains life, continues to automatically, harmoniously perpetuate life, and then, you know, when life evolves, another gift of life is we can talk and make up ideas. Now, when you take the ideas that life gifted you, the ability to tell stories that life gifted you, and now you weaponize those those words and ideas and to kill life, that's the first sin. That, to me, that's the most egregious, blasphemous thing that we can do to each other, is to take ideas that were gifted to us from life, from this system, and then go through this system and kill people with ideas that we make up.
Yeah.
This system was here before ideas were. It doesn't require them.
Why do we think advanced life doesn't want to show themselves here, allegedly, if we consistently do the same thing and expect different results? That's what Einstein said is insanity, right?
Yeah.
We just do the same thing over and over again,
Yeah.
and it replicates, and we don't do it. If I can't articulate my side, even if we're different, without being confrontational, and saying, well, you know what, here's why I think this, and you go, oh, well, maybe I can buy a little bit of that, but here's why I'm coming from this
Exactly.
way, and develop some kind of consensus to go forward. It benefits everybody.
Yeah. We insult each other, not the ideas that we're sharing. We critique each other and not the ideas that we're trying to sift through. If we keep it focused on solving problems and the ideas themselves, and versus I'm trying to destroy your character so your idea doesn't hold weight.
Right.
What it doesn't make sense. We're talking about ideas. Let's keep it there. And it doesn't have to be emotional. And I think that when you look at the ancients, the Stoics, the Egyptians, that's how they dealt with these things.
Right.
They took a totally different approach to this, and it wasn't about emotions and losing your control when you interacted with someone else. It was about maintaining a flat nervous system, and the Stoics talk about it. Being even, being open, and even when Jesus is mentioned in text, it's always, if someone's pointing the finger or trying to accuse somebody of something, it was all, you are the problem. The person that's pointing the finger is the problem. And there was a word, the word accuser, when you translate it back, it means it's shaitan. It's the same as Satan. You know what I'm saying? So we have to stop those things, the things that to me disrupt the flow and the harmony of this system. And then I think the system is perfect.
I think that's great, and I really appreciate you stopping by. If people want to learn more about what you're doing or what's going on, do you have a website? Do you have a book?
Well, I'm slow motion with all of that stuff.
Yeah?
But Facebook, as I'm open, I'm always there. The page is just facebook.com/DVD731. And then Instagram is David A. Williamson 731. July 31st is my birthday. and our email address, dvd731@proton.me. And I'll leave. I can text you that information, all that contact stuff as well.
That'd be great.
But people contact me directly. I don't have a problem with it. I'll speak to anybody.
Well, I appreciate you sharing, man.